Hello, my friends. Welcome to Leadership Synergized, where we explore purpose, impact, and the people who bring both to life through leadership. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. Today, we're honored to be joined by Dr. Tracy Lorey, Superintendent of the Greater Jasper Community School Corporation located in Southern Indiana. With more than 3 decades of experience as an educator and a leader, Dr. Lorey brings a servant's heart, a systems-level mindset, and a deep commitment to students, families, staff, and her school community. In this episode, she shares powerful insights on staying true to mission, leading with humility, and cultivating a shared vision that empowers others to thrive. Let's dive in. Good day and welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Synergized. I'm your host, Kevin Smith, and we're joined today by Dr. Tracy Lorey. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself here in just a moment, but she's been so gracious to join us on Leadership Synergized and share her life experiences. Probably a few lessons learned you may be able to gauge by the fact she's wearing a school mascot logo, a wildcat. We'll talk about that as we go through this week and next week's episode. Dr. Lorey has been a lifelong educator and has experienced a lot of leadership opportunities and quite frankly made some big impact, not only in her community, but through the children, the parents, and in her state, the state of Indiana. And on this show, we just hope that you have an opportunity to take away one thing that you can ponder and help you identify your potential and the value that you have that's been presented by God and the opportunities you have along your path and purpose. Dr. Lorey, that was a little bit too long-winded for me, so welcome and thank you so much for taking this time.
Thank you, Kevin. It's an honor to be able to meet with you this morning and hopefully have some good conversation about what leadership means to me and what maybe my leadership path has brought me to, and hopefully I can be of some assistance to a future leader as they prepare for those roles moving forward.
Well, I have zero doubt on that aspect, Dr. Lorey. You're going to make a difference as you do in your role and as a parent and a grandparent and as just a child of God on this earth in that aspect. Just a brief introduction from my perspective. Dr. Lorey currently serves as a school superintendent in a southwestern Indiana community, Jasper, Indiana. Community population around 18 to 20,000. Dr. Lorey can correct me in that aspect, but it's grown quite a bit. I started working in Jasper in 1983, I think it was, September, and probably the population was roughly about half, maybe a little bit more than half of what it is today. But the school corporation, the Greater Jasper School Corporation, is one of the most highly respected throughout the state and certainly in the region, and that is all and much to do with not only Dr. Lorey, but her team, her staff support leaders, her building leaders, and the educators, whom Dr. Lorey I have found just to be so dedicated to the children each time I have an opportunity to speak to one of them.
You know, it is so true. And I know all schools, districts, and schools can also brag about the great teachers and support staff and leaders that they have in their building. And we are no exception to that. Our mission is to ensure that our students have a world-class education and that when they walk across the stage and we hand them their diploma, that we have prepared them both educationally and have set them up with a mindset that they know what they're going to do moving forward. And that doesn't happen by any one individual. It's really like the synergy of everyone in the organization doing the things that they are meant to do to make that organization work. And without those talented individuals in every one of those roles, we can't celebrate that at the end of our school year.
Very well said. Thank you. So let's back up a moment, and I just want to give you time to introduce Dr. Tracy Lorey and who she is and what her role currently stands at.
Okay, great, Kevin. I have been fortunate to be an educator in the Jasper school system my entire career. I think this will be beginning year 33 for me. I actually can go way back to student teaching at Ireland Elementary School. And when I finished up student teaching, there were just very few teaching jobs available at that time. And so, you know, as an early educator, I wanted to set myself up in a position to serve children and gain as much knowledge and understanding of learning, teaching, curriculum as I could. So my very first year out, I served as an instructional assistant within the district. And then from there, moved into a classroom the following year where I taught kindergarten for 2 years. That's a very humbling experience teaching our earliest learners. I will say that kindergarten learning has changed quite significantly in 33 years, but I digress. I spent about 7 years at Ireland Elementary School as a teacher. And at that point, I really began appreciating not only the work of teachers in the classroom, but really thinking about like the impact that you can make on a systems level. And so I began working toward an administrative degree and then became the principal at Fifth Street Elementary School here in our community, which no longer exists, by the way. We've closed that down and merged it into another school. But um, so with that, I just have always been interested in the system of education and the part that every person plays in the accomplishment of teaching kids and having kids learn and find academic success. And so I think that's what has kind of spurred me on through the years. And so from principal, I became an assistant superintendent where my passion of curriculum, instruction, and assessment was my focus. And then had the great fortune of being able to serve as the superintendent here for the last 13 years. So that's where I am today, and very happy to be here. I think sometimes we explore what opportunities are there in our field from time to time, but the grass is never always greener on the other side. And I'll tell you, Jasper is a wonderful place, and we have wonderful community and wonderful staff that serve the needs of our children. So it's a wonderful place to be.
Well, I know the community, quite honestly, I've never spoke to anyone where your name came up that there wasn't just a joy and tremendous respect for what you do in serving and quite frankly, the professionalism, integrity that you bring to the role. It's not an easy role, and I think you could probably say that in this world today of education, in many aspects. You talked about where there weren't jobs readily available when you were looking for a teaching position. That's changed quite a bit in the field today.
Well, it absolutely has, and I think it's probably a perfect storm of just the state of education in our state and nation. Um, it, I think our educators are under-respected. I think they're underestimated in the professionalism that they bring to the job and just the amount of knowledge and skill and background that it takes to actually be a teacher. And then just the political nature of the way I think education has been navigated over the past several years has kind of driven folks away from the field, which in my heart makes me incredibly sad because I feel like it's one of the most noble professions in the world. I mean, you can't be a doctor unless you've been touched by a teacher. You can't be a police officer unless you've been molded by a teacher. And so a teacher touches every single vocation in this world. And so it's important for us to try to figure out how we bridge that gap. And I do think that we've tried to make some local strides in trying to fill that gap of creating more interest in the field, but there has been quite a shift over the last several years, and I think it's just a perfect storm of variables.
Dr. Lorey, we spoke just briefly when we launched this episode about the staff and the teachers and their commitment to the children. And, as you're talking with a lot of things that happen around the peripheral edges of education, it's a field that's very difficult at times to remain secure within your own skin, if you will, at least from other educators that I've spoke with. But my experience is those who are successful in a long-term manner really have stayed true to themselves from beginning to end, regardless of the peripheral pieces. Talk a little bit, if you will, maybe it's your direct experience or some other aspects you've shared, because in the state of Indiana, there's like 289 total individuals that share the role of superintendent. There's very few in that regard, but you all are very close
Mhm.
in that aspect. You share best practices. You don't try to keep things close to the vest. But what is it that allows those individuals who can stay true to themselves? What is it that they do that keeps that outside static or noise away from changing their focus?
But focus is actually the key, Kevin. And as we said, there's a lot of noise out in our world that can either fill your cup and make you feel confident and competent. And then there's a lot of noise that if you let it, it can do just the opposite. And my message is always we need to know what those messages are, both positive and negative, but it really, we're in charge of our center of control. And so if it's something outside of my control, I'm not going to give it the attention that it needs because that really can shade my purpose and my mission and my priorities. And so I think it's important for individuals to find success. They need to be able to focus on the things that are within their control. Um, we can take stock of some of those things, but if you can't control it, don't give it the energy that others want you to give it. And so I think to find success as an educator, I think you just have to think about what are the things that, as an educator, are within my realm of control that I know that I can, on a daily basis, make a difference. And I think if you can do that and you can keep that mindset, you can continue to strive forward and move forward and find success.
Well said, my friend. Well said. Well, let's go back to Dr. Lorey. You introduced kind of yourself and the roles you've had. When did you first recognize that education was where your heart, your passion, your desire was at?
I always loved children. And that's the one thing, like when you talk to new educators and you ask them, why did you become a teacher? One of the first things I want to hear is that they love kids, because if you don't love children, then you're in the wrong field. And so I always have had a big place in my heart for children. I've always had a big place in my heart for uh, making a difference in the life of a child, whether it's helping them learn a new skill or gain new knowledge, or maybe it's helping them because there is a social emotional need. And so just being able to love children, be able to recognize that early on, a babysitter, love taking care of other people's children. But when I left high school, in those days, you still do, you took this assessment that would say, like, what fields are you interested in? And it was like teaching or accounting. And so I was like, people, I'm a people person. And so it was pretty early on that I knew that education was going to be for me. Um, Teaching is still one of the favorite jobs that I've ever had. And on days as a school leader that you need to be regrounded and reset and reminded of your why, just go sit in a classroom or visit a school and be in the realm of students and teaching, and it will remind you very quickly.
Dr. Loy, as you're talking, it throws me back 4 or 5 years ago in the role I had as superintendent north of Terre Haute. My greatest joy was at 7:30 walking to the elementary school and just holding the door open for all the kids to get off the bus and then walk them the hall. And just those children are the closest to God of anyone you're going to have. And the joy, and regardless of what else is going on in life, it just kind of presents what we would like to have in all of us in every moment of our lives. At least that's what I took away. But let me jump back because you talked about children and love, and before we went on the air, the episode, we talked a bit about kids and grandkids, and I want to ask you something from a personal perspective, and feel free to answer or not answer. But my wife and I talk all the time, and we pray and we thank God for the opportunity. But we have found, as we reflect back, we have absolutely grown more through our children and then now our grandchildren, and the passion and the joy and watching them adapt to changes in life, probably more so than we ever did prior to having them. Is that something you find in your role today or even in your life today that kind of helps you continue to grow and learn?
I would 100% agree with that. I can remember as a young teacher, after I had my own children, noting to myself, I became a better teacher after I became a parent because now I could share the perspective of the parent's role in their child's education. And I have used my parent hat and now my grandparent hat to be able to understand when other parents or grandparents call with questions and concerns. And it develops a sort of empathy that you don't have when you are not a
Mm.
parent or a grandparent. And that empathy is important because I feel like everyone needs to be understood, they need to be heard, and they need to at least know that they have been heard and respected. And sometimes you can sit aside an individual and let them know that you are similar in that way. And because of those shared experiences, you can come to a common ground of understanding. So, absolutely, I think we become better. We become better educators. We become better leaders, and well, better people for being a parent and a grandparent, I think.
Yeah, it's almost a built-in natural opportunity for reflection to where if we just stand alone and sit back, our minds kind of go elsewhere when we try to reflect. At least that's one thing that I have found in that aspect. Dr. Lorey, as superintendent of a school corporation, you're 1,000 or so students, fairly good size, but yet the largest school corporations in the state are what, 4 or 5,000 probably in those corporations. What do you find is the biggest challenge when it comes to sustaining the vision, ensuring the vision of what you and the board and the community wants for the school along and through the school buildings themselves? What's your biggest challenge or your leadership's biggest challenge you find today?
I think there are a couple of things. First of all, when you think about vision, it needs to be a shared vision. And although, as the leader of a district, it's your job to try to set that vision and work to carry that vision out, it also needs to be collectively shared by everyone who has a part in making sure that that vision is accomplished. And so oftentimes communication is a challenge. And then helping everyone to feel like they're a part of that process, from the development of that vision to all of the strategic pieces of that and carrying it out. I think far too often we fail to celebrate
Mm.
some of the accomplishments that we have. And so I think sometimes that can be a barrier. But communication is certainly one of those pieces that I think is difficult in a larger system. And just ensuring that every person understands that their value and the value of the part that they play in carrying out that vision.
You hit upon two areas that I want to spend just a little bit of time with, and they both were the C aspects, celebration and and communication in that aspect. Let's start with celebration. The drive to excellence. And I love Pat Riley's definition because sometimes excellence, when we hear that word, at least in my experience, can seem like this thing or star in the universe we can never touch and get to in that piece. And Pat Riley, the great coach of the LA Lakers during their primetime run in the 80s and into the early 90s, basically says excellence is no more than just taking one step forward with progress each and every day. I'm paraphrasing him in that piece. But with that aspect, as a leader with drive, someone that probably wants to achieve and maximize, sometimes we just go past those opportunities in the natural settings in those regards. I know I'm certainly been guilty of that, not pausing enough to celebrate whether it's individual or team aspects. How can a leader refocus in that regard to be sure they don't miss out on those opportunities, not just for themselves, but for their team members, their community?
I think you have to be very targeted and make that a priority. Um, and here locally, we have worked very hard to begin trying to just recognize not only the students and their achievements, but the individuals who are helping them to find that accomplishment. And so we started doing staff member of the month, and
Mm.
so we get a nomination, and we make a pretty big deal out of that. We make a presentation, we video that, we take pictures, we present them with a certificate. We make it a big priority, and then we plaster that on our social media because not only do we want to thank them and recognize them in our organization, but we want everybody else that is a part of our stakeholder field to know this is a fantastic individual who's making a positive difference in the life of the children of our district. And then we give the community the opportunity to do that. And I think by recognizing individual efforts, you then begin to build that culture of shared responsibility. And then that also culture of knowing that they are valued, and we thank them for that and we appreciate that, and we want everyone to continue striving for that collective goal. We also, when we think about celebrating, we've tried to be really targeted in utilizing marketing and communications, and that's a whole new position in a school district. And we hired a young lady who is actually an OCU grad
Oh, wow.
um, a couple of years ago to start our very first marketing and communications program. And the whole intent of that is to be very targeted and specific, day in and day out, communicating the big things and all the little things that our district has to offer our students, the successes, both academic and extracurricular. And then just it's a information system that we can continually share with our community anything and everything that our district is working toward. And I think that has made a big difference in not only celebrating, but also the communication side of things.
Yeah, you mentioned the postings on social media and the staff member of the month. I happen to follow, and I just love just seeing the smiles. I don't know that I read so much about what they've done or that regard, but just seeing the smile and the positivity, it just comes out naturally in that aspect. So kudos to you and the team in that regard, Dr. Loy. The second C goes back to communication. And, as you're talking, I'm thinking of Dr. John Maxwell's book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And as I reflect, from the outside, obviously not direct knowledge uh, with your school corporation, but the people I've had a chance to interact with tells me that you and your team do a wonderful job of connecting. And sometimes in larger organizations, individuals with your type of role, a CEO role, a vice president role, maybe try to stay above the organization in that aspect. And my experience says that that's where you miss out on those opportunities to connect because regardless of the size of the organization, I believe it's really one-on-one connection. And when you can connect, communication will flow in a much more consistent manner.
I would agree with that. And I've always had this philosophy. My husband calls me, um, I don't know if this is kind or not. He calls me the blue collar leader. And he does that because he knows that my philosophy has always been I would never ask anyone in our organization to do something that I myself am unwilling to do. And I think it's important as a leader to be a reflective leader, but it's also very important to dig in and be um, I'm not coming up with the word shared leadership, meaning if there's a piece of trash on the floor when I'm walking by, I'm going to pick that up. It's not just the custodian's job. If we're shorthanded in the cafeteria one day and I've got some time, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to help serve a meal. And so I think that is important. I think that makes you human. It makes you a part of the team because it takes everybody. And if you're not going to play in the sandbox with everybody else who's playing in the sandbox, how do you even know what their needs are or what the needs of the organization are going to be? Um, and how do you build the kind of relationship where people will willingly come to you and openly share, this is going great, or hey, I got this idea, or you know what, this isn't working very well. So, how do you ever build that kind of rapport if you are not a, a practitioner in the field with those people doing the work?
We're going to explore that a bit more, but for those of you watching that may not have a chance to know Dr. Lorey or the school corporation, I live in the school, and what she's describing is exactly what I experienced with not just her, but everyone that I have a chance to come in contact with, whether it's at an athletic event, in the classrooms, coming to monitor a student educator in that regard. Dr. Tracy Lorey, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you. Great words of wisdom. Thank you again for giving of your time.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for watching, and I hope you've got more than one thought going now, because there's been a great deal of wisdom shared by this wonderful leader that you see on the screen. God bless. My friends, thank you so much for joining us on Leadership Synergized. Dr. Tracy Lorey reminded us today that leadership at its best is humble, focused, and always grounded in service. If you found value in this conversation, please subscribe, share this episode, and reflect on how you, too, can lead with integrity, intention, right where you are. Until next time, stay inspired and keep leading well.